Sherry Fitzgerald talks about the homes that she lived in and talking about Aspen. Take one.
You want me to start with Aspen or start with, I mean, as a kid, I lived in Denver on a busy street from the time I was born until I left to go to college and move on to my life. Um, and I went to the University of Colorado when I was 18, and I lived in Boulder, except for summers, for that first part of my college education. I lived in a dormitory, Sewell Hall, a good portion of the time, but then Fred Dawson, who I had been dating before I went to college, came to CU so he could be close to me, and we stayed at his apartment uh, just off campus on the hill a good portion of the time. And while I was in college, I became pregnant with my first child, and I kept going to school while I was pregnant. Terrified one of my professors one day when I needed to go to the bathroom, and I got up in the middle of a class and headed out to go to the bathroom, and he thought I was going to, that I was in labor, and he was all excited and got freaked out, but I came back after I used the restroom, and so he was disappointed. He thought I was heading out to have the baby. Um, but I eventually did have the baby and continued in school while I had him. I had a babysitter who helped me out with the daycare, and yet it got to be too much, and um, let's see, that was when Fred decided to go to New York. And I went to southern Colorado to stay with my friends, the Cransons. They had 7 children, 7 boys, no, they had 7 sons to run the farm, and 3 daughters, a set of twins and an older one. And the women stayed in the house and made dinners and took care of the needs of the household, and the men went out in the fields and worked the farm. And I loved it on the farm. I also loved one of the boys on the farm. Danny was a really sweet farm boy, and I got very close to getting married and staying on the farm, but it was too soon. Uh, After Fred had left us, and I had the 2 small children, and it was a great place to recoup and recover from that difficult marriage and the loss of the marriage. I eventually went back to college and finished my undergraduate degree in sociology and English, double major, and was granted magna cum laude as my reward for working hard and studying and getting good grades. Um, I then went on to law school and became a single parent professional. And I found it to be pretty overwhelming. But I had a very successful law practice, and I had a mediation practice, which was really my big love. I learned to, I took a class in mediation, and I then began to do more settlement conference kinds of practice than litigation, which was much more fulfilling for me because the parties got invested in the outcome and got an outcome that was better for them than one where one party won and one party lost. Both parties could get some of what they wanted and give up some of what they were willing to give up in order to get the thing they wanted most. When I was 65, I retired, and that was rather distressing. I really had enjoyed my work, and being without that work was difficult. But I did a lot of reading. I did some travel. I lived in Oregon for 8 or 9 years to be close to my friend Marcia and Joanna, who had moved there ahead of me. And I did a bunch of gardening and hiking, and there were some wonderful sand dunes right behind my house, and I used to take difficult long walks in the sand because it's not easy to walk in sand. And I had some cats I inherited from my children, a couple of them, and I had one of my own, so I ended up with at least 3 cats. I think I may have had more than 3, but I think I just had 3. And eventually, I think I spent 8 or 10 years in Oregon and enjoyed Marcia Yaris and Joanna Trollinger as friends there. And then I eventually moved to California. Did I first go to Palo Alto? Then I think I lived in Palo Alto for a while, and I can't remember if it was exactly then, but eventually I ended up in Nevada close to my kids in an apartment. And there's an organization here called Age Song that I joined for people who are over 50. And that's been a real good social setting, especially during the pandemic, because we're sort of isolated by that. But the women who we had planned to be meeting in person began to meet online instead, and I still am having meetings with those women, and it's a nice community that has been difficult to have because of the pandemic on a person-to-person level, but we meet once a week on the internet or on the phone and have good conversations. I lived in my own apartment in downtown Novato when I first moved here, and I really liked that. There's a nice commercial area, and I went to the shops and took nice walks with my dog, and eventually instead I moved in with Sean and Sarah. That was after I had surgery for a broken leg, and I never moved out. I'm happily still living with them. I read a lot. I have my meetings with my Age Song ladies. And I'm really enjoying making friends with my grandson. right now. He takes me to my cognitive therapist once a week and then comes back and we play games and um, have conversations, and it's really neat to make friends with him. So that's pretty much what's going on, what has gone on with me, and what is going on with me now. And I'm a pretty happy camper.